Here we go. Perfect. Okay, hi everyone. My name's Paul Davy. I am a Biodiversity Officer working for the Environment Agency. I work in our Thames area Fisheries, Biodiversity and Geomorphology team, focusing primarily on the River Wey catchment, which is over in the west of Surrey. I'm going to talk about the watercourse module in the B&G metric, what we call the watercourse metric. Sorry if that wasn't clear from the title. There's a quick show of hands of who knows what I'm talking about when I say the watercourse metric. Okay, that's good, that's good. I am just going to touch briefly on what it is and what our role is, and then why we need it, when it's needed, and how we assess the watercourse. I've got a couple of hot topics, things that have come up following a year of its implementation, and then finally to finish on what good river restoration looks like. So it was introduced as part of Biodiversity Net Gain. It is one of 3 modules, sits alongside the area habitats and hedgerows. Just like those habitats, it needs to be assessed for its condition, and we use the river condition assessment to do that. In terms of our role, the Environment Agency developed the watercourse metric with support from Natural England. However, we aren't a statutory consultee on the watercourse metric. We tend to focus more at the strategic level rather than the individual planning application level. So focusing more on local plans, local nature recovery strategies, water framework directive, and so on. However, we do make comments on individual planning applications in relation to the watercourse metric, where we're making comments in relation to other matters. And I find that local authorities are keen to hear our view on it. They tend to take our advice, and I think it's because it's still quite new for everyone. So why do we need a watercourse module in the metric? Or perhaps to put it another way, how will BNG help to restore biodiversity in our rivers? Well, according to the Water Framework Directive, physical modifications is one of the top pressures impacting the water environment, with 41% of all water bodies impacted by it. By physical modifications, we mean interventions that have changed the shape, the flow regime, or the natural processes of a river and its floodplain. So in other words, where we've knackered the river. And this is where I see BNG really helping, because I think it can help to reduce physical modifications that are already there. I think it can mitigate new pressures as part of proposals, and through that it can help us to create healthy, resilient river systems. It's also good to have a renewed focus on rivers as well. I think we're having to see a lot of upskilling from local authorities and from ecologists to get to know how the watercourse metric works and how rivers work as well, which can only be a good thing. There's a bit of a perception that watercourse B&G is difficult, but actually it's quite straightforward with a say what you see approach to surveying rivers. When do we need a watercourse metric? So in simple terms, it's where a development's red line boundary falls within the riparian zone. When we talk about a river, it's not just a blue line on a map or a column of water. The bank top of the river, or what we call the riparian zone, is a critical part of the river for its healthy functioning, and it gives it space to function naturally, provides a wildlife corridor, and that all-important connectivity between other habitats. The riparian zone, for the purposes of B&G, is 10 metres back from the break of slope of the river, which you can see in this image here. So when the red line boundary falls within that area, that triggers the need for a watercourse metric. And then a river condition assessment is needed, and then a riparian, river and riparian encroachment assessment is needed, which gives penalties for encroaching into the river or into the riparian zone. And conversely, you'll be rewarded for proposals that remove encroachment, such as removing weirs, hard bank protection, river naturalisation, and so on. So I just wanted to demonstrate how a single item of data in the watercourse metric can have quite a big impact on the baseline of a watercourse. So, for example, if you misclassify the river, for example, that can massively overstate or understate your biodiversity gains. And the first item of data you capture in the watercourse metric is the watercourse type. So you've got priority, habitat, other rivers that aren't priority, canals, culverts and ditches. So a canal in the metric is defined as an artificial body of water, originally created for the purposes of navigation. So we could ask, well, what about the riverway navigation? Is that a canal? What about the River Thames, for example? Is that a canal? Thank you. So, I mean, the map on the left here, this is Millmead in Guildford. I carried out a river condition assessment here for proposals for a fish bypass channel we're putting in. When you come here, it looks very much like a canal. It's certainly navigable. It has a towpath, but it's also a functional river, and it carries out all the functions of a river. It carries water and sediment out to sea, assuming that sediment doesn't get trapped behind one of the many weirs on the way. But it's also a functional river. It's also, but I classified it as a river rather than a canal. The map on the right is Bertham Court Farm, where we've recently installed a fish bypass channel, and our consultants carried out the river condition assessment on this, and they classified the river as a canal. And I challenged that, and we came to a compromise because, as you can see, where the river travels north and splits off, there's quite clearly a bit of a canal cut that goes past Bowers Mill House. So we agreed to kind of split the river into two sections here and came to a bit of a compromise. So a bit of attention to detail is required when carrying out these metrics. And so if anyone in here is going to be reviewing a metric or perhaps is carrying them out themselves, it's definitely something to pay attention to, and we are looking to get some more clarity in the guidance on this. And just some other planning policy where we can protect and restore rivers. We work very hard in the Thames area, in the Environment Agency, trying to get buffer zone policies in local plans. This is a good one in Guildford's local plan, providing an 8-metre buffer zone to all rivers. It's not good to have development so close to rivers. That's not being anti-development or anti-growth. That's just being sensible. And where we're consulted early, when rivers are thought about early in the process, we tend to get much better outcomes. If it's left too late, for example, at the planning application stage, it's much more difficult to get things changed. And a good example, I had East Hants local plan a little while back under my desk, just next door to Surrey, and that had a huge development on top of a chalk stream. So clearly, the planning teams aren't thinking about rivers, and a bit of a plea here, I guess, for anyone who's working with planning policy teams or who has links in, let's try and think about rivers early on, and I'll be interested to hear any ideas about how we can make that happen. It's just an example here of where we have secured good river restoration through the planning system. This was before B&G. It's actually not in Surrey, but it's a nice example of where we've achieved good river restoration. So on the left is hard bank protection. There's a concrete wall on the left, and that's what it looks like today. And we secured that through the planning system because we were consulted early on it and were able to influence the plans. And we've spoken to residents in the area who said one of the reasons why they were attracted to the area was because of the nice riverside properties. So it's in everyone's interest to think about rivers early on in the process. And finally, I just want to end on this slide. I appreciate it's quite a lot going on there. Don't need to read it all. This is a slide I pinched from our internal geomorphology team. It's kind of the principles for good river restoration, and I think we can link all these things into B&G actually. So I think B&G can deliver good river restoration. So letting nature do the work, thinking bigger, connecting. I talked about restoring natural processes, buffer zones, removing obstacles and things like that. Giving space and time. B&G is over 30 years, which is quite a small period of time in terms of rivers, but it's long enough to allow the river to recover. And finally, planning and prioritising. I just mentioned about the importance of thinking about rivers early on to get the best outcomes for the river. So hopefully you found something interesting there. Thank you.